What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Tavern Talks 2.0. I'm your host, Jay, and I am joined again this week by my good friend, Iron. How you doing, Iron?
Hello! Thanks for having me. Oh, that was a little loud. Hello!
I was probably loud too. It's good.
No, it's fine. Hello! Thanks for having me back. What are we talking about today?
So today, we're going to be diving into a very exciting topic. I had an epiphany for this the other day. I haven't seen any other channels do this yet, so, we'll see how this goes. If you guys like it, definitely let us know. Today, we're talking about terrible video games that we love. This is going to be a combination of games that we feel were either didn't live up to the mark of what they could have been or should have been, all the way into games that are so bad and unplayable that they have made a mark for themselves in history, and nobody, and I do mean nobody, can defend these games to any other standpoint other than nostalgia.
Fair.
So, we're gonna dive into that, but before we do, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to Velvet Games, and ring that bell so you're notified of when new content comes out. We really appreciate your support, and we're looking forward to making more of this type of stuff. I have some ideas that we're gonna be reaching out into the future and making more of these. And if you guys wanna see a part 2 to this video, let us know in the comments below. I'd love to do that. I've loved having Iron and Alex on. Iron, you are welcome anytime on the channel, and we'd love to see more of this type of video if you're interested.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty, so we're gonna go ahead and dive in. Iron, I wanna give you first dibs to talk about your first terrible game that you love.
All right, so I want to let you know that when it comes to terrible games, these are going to have caveats because there's clearly a reason that I and others like them, but they are terrible in a way that I'll elaborate. And there's no better way to start than by going off of a game that a lot of people play and those same people tend to hate quite a bit. That is going to be Elite Dangerous by Frontier Devs.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about that game.
So first and foremost, Elite Dangerous is the latest in the Elite game series by Frontier, wherein the premise is very simple. You buy a spaceship, you fly out into the stars, you do various odd jobs missions, be it shipping, be it bounty hunting, be it just working for one of the factions or nations within the setting, and just kind of having fun doing it. And Elite Dangerous is an online multiplayer game wherein you can fly across the galaxy, explore, bounty hunt, fight other players. I don't recommend that. There's lots of people who have plenty of hours in anti-player builds. Fight NPCs, collect bounties, and have fun with your friends. It's a very fun premise and a very fun game, and the reason it's bad is not because of its core mechanics. In fact, from a core standpoint, it's actually a very fun game. Definitely, if you like Star Citizen, it's very much like Star Citizen, except first and foremost, the map it's dang near the entire Milky Way galaxy, and I do not mean that figuratively.
Wow.
I mean, this is beyond enormous, and the things you can find out there are varied and vast, but you really have to look for them because a lot of systems are just standard terrestrial planets and stars and whatnot. But the reason why it's bad, quote unquote, and why I'm putting it on this list is because of the background information. The game was supposed to be Star Citizen tier, because originally the idea was you can get up, you can look around your ship, you can do all that kind of stuff, the same sort of stuff that you can do in Star Citizen. That was promised almost a decade ago now, and you still can't get out of the driver's seat.
Wow.
Not really. It is still fun for what it is, but Frontier Dev has a very, very bad habit of making lofty promises that do not get fulfilled. So if I did not know about them, I would have just called this an amazing flight simulator game, an amazing space game, and it's a lot of fun. It can get a little repetitive on the gameplay loop once you've done everything a little bit, but to the same degree, if you're having fun, you're having fun. I used to relax with a buddy of mine and just go space trucking, taking things from system to system and selling things off, not even to try and grind, but just because it's relaxing and fun. But the idea that I could have been doing that and, I don't know, having my character get up, walk around the ship, check on the cargo, look at all that kind of stuff in this vast universe, and knowing that that was the plan, but it just never happened, that's why it's terrible. And don't get me wrong, like, the community both loves and hates it. It's a bit like War Thunder players in that way, where they love to play it. They'll spend like 2,000 hours in it, and then they'll write a negative review and say like, this game is not what I was promised. Proceeds to play 1,000 more hours.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, based on what I'm seeing here, I just Googled it while you were talking about it because the name sounded familiar. This looks like the better Starfield.
Oh, and it really was. Like, this was Starfield. Well, this is what Bethesda thought Starfield was going to be. And before Star Citizen came along, it really was the spaceship, like, juggernaut. It was the, like, spaceship simulator. But then, you know, and of course, Frontier was willing to kind of hide behind the excuse of, well, it's really difficult to implement, you know, player characters walking around in human scale while on ships. And then Star Citizen just did it. And now they kind of look like they've got eggs on their faces. So I may have to make the switch at some point. But I mean, it's still a fun game. The entire reason I have a HOTAS, a controller set up with a throttle and a joystick and pedals, is because of Elite Dangerous, because it just makes it so immersive to fly the ship. It's even got VR support. It makes me a little dizzy personally, and I normally don't get dizzy in VR. But I mean, the fact that you can look around the cockpit and use the joystick controls and everything, it's incredible for that. It's just not everything it was promised, and that's why I'm ranking it as a terrible game that I still love.
I hear you. And I mean, looking at it, just like you'd mentioned, it literally says here in the overview, and this is, you know, whatever Google AI is, it literally says, Elite Dangerous is an online spaceflight simulation game developed and published by Frontier Developments. The player commands a spaceship and explores a realistic 1-to-1 scale open world representation of the Milky Way galaxy, with the gameplay being open-ended. That is wild for a game from 2014 to have something of that scale. I mean, even today, you know, I think it's Hello Games, if I'm not mistaken, that does No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
And they're going to be, they're in the process of developing a new game called, what is it? Something Light No Fire or something like that. I forget exactly the name. We did a video on it. It was actually the first Tavern Talks 2.0 that we did back with Tate. You guys can go watch that. I'll put a little link up in the corner so you can go click and watch that. But they literally are talking about a 1-to-1 representation, like, or maybe not representation, but a scale Earth. It's literally the size of Earth. Nice. And they're touting it as the, quote, largest game ever made. But then you look at this and it's like, okay, clearly this is bigger. And I don't even know how they managed to do that without cheating a little bit. I'm guessing there was probably some procedural, you know, generation. Yeah. Obviously, if it's the size of the Milky Way galaxy, there's a lot of empty space. So you can cheat by compressing that and making the player think they're moving through that. So the way it works is each system is rendered. So you do jump between the spaces of stars. But that said, as much as I did, you know, blame Frontier for not living up to promises, that is one that they did live up to, that it really is a scale model of the Milky Way. And I mean, if you look up, like, astronomically, if you look up a real star system that we've observed somewhere around the center of the Milky Way galaxy, you can fly there. And most of the galaxy has, you know, some nice little secrets or something sprinkled throughout. And I'll say this, the game has been on for, I believe, over a decade. What was it, 2014 when it dropped? Anyway. 2014, yeah. Yeah, there we go. So it's now over a decade old, and I think the players collectively, again, massive collective of players, have only explored something like 10% of the galaxy, and we keep finding new things, too. Like, at one point, aliens do kind of exist in this setting, but they're very esoteric and far away. Entire plot threads began in this game because a random player on a random date discovered a system that had them in it, and that got their attention. Like, the devs didn't just plant it, as far as we know. It was, like, scripted as, okay, if a player ever enters this star system, then it begins. And it's cool that way because the players literally do move the story forward. It's just, there's a lot of features that they promised that we didn't get, so that's why I'm listing it on the bad side of things that I like. I hear you. Yeah, and I mean, especially when it comes to promising features, again, I got to go back to No Man's Sky and Hello Games.
Yeah.
They definitely were promising the moon and then delivered several unfinished moons. Like it felt very empty in that respect. And even to some extent now, No Man's Sky still feels a little on the empty side. I think that's mainly just because of the style of procedural generation. The fact that they utilized, scripting as opposed to AI, which obviously it wasn't as prevalent back when they made No Man's Sky. I think they could have benefited from that as far as, logic and understanding how things might develop. Things just felt a little out of place. Like the aliens didn't always make sense. It was a very strange system. And the fact that there were only 3 civilizations, so to speak, of beyond your own. And then there's this, random other aliens that seem like they were part of something, but it felt like it was lacking a lot of soul. Even today, after all these years, though, I have to say they have absolutely delivered on above and beyond what they originally set out for. And I would love to see, especially considering with as interesting as you're describing this, I would love to see Frontier come back to this game and say, all right, let's see what we can do and try to be a Hello Games. But I know as well as anybody else that spaghetti code's not exactly the most fun thing to work with.
No, and here's the thing, Frontier does actively work on the game, but they always seem to find a way to put in a new feature that isn't the big ones. A while back, they added the ability to get into basically a rover and travel around on the surface of planets. First off, really cool, fascinating. Second off, it's still not getting out of my chair, Frontier. That's not what you promised. And they did eventually add people in the game for an expansion you had to buy, but, whatever. But it was mostly for, urban exploring and, PvP style things. You still can't walk around on board the ship that you built. It's like you're building pieces of things that could be used to make the promise that you made 10 years ago. But this isn't the thing I asked for. This is adjacent to. So it's like, they're not an inactive dev and they haven't let it rot. I don't know if it's better or worse, the fact that they're still, there's been at least one update that's come out since I last played, so they've added more, but I can almost guarantee it's not walking around on your spaceship.
Oh, well, I can understand that. I would definitely feel the same way.
Yeah.
And hopefully, hey, Frontier, if you're listening to this for some reason,
do it.
It has been spoken. Get it done.
Let me go to the lounge on my ship. Let me see.
Let's see it. With that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into my first title.
Yeah, what's yours?
So the first title, and I don't actually have a lot of history with this game. It was one of those that I feel like, I was a kid when I got it, and what's crazy is I see it's rated M. I do not remember this game being rated M. I thought it was rated T. Maybe they reclassified it or something, but I remember getting this game as a child. I think it was secondhand. I'm pretty sure it was secondhand from GameStop, because of course, when you're a kid and you got a PS2, GameStop is your best friend, especially getting all the secondhand titles. But this is a Japanese game called Raw Danger.
Raw Danger.
And it is effectively, I would say it's the esoteric and existential fears that every Japanese person has deep inside of them about natural disasters.
Oh?
And it is every natural disaster. We are talking earthquakes, floods, storms. I mean, anything you can process that could happen in one place all happen at the same time.
Okay.
It literally begins with basically a massive flash flood hits a city and breaks this dam. Or I think it was a levee, but semantics, I guess.
Yeah.
And it floods the city. And it is this absolutely massive disaster that is just rolling through and causing all sorts of problems. You start the game, I'll back it up a little bit. This game came out back in 2006, but ported over to the PlayStation 2 for American audiences, I believe in 2007. And then the thing that I found was kind of interesting about this that was sort of not conventional is the fact that you follow multiple protagonists throughout the story. It would literally, like, you play through one character's journey and then it would end and then it would move on to another. And there is absolutely nothing on the cover, there's nothing in the description, nothing in the opening to this game that leads you to believe that. And looking at this, I never actually completed this game because there are 6 main characters. I think I've gotten through 3 of them, or at least I think I got into the 3rd one and then said, I'm done with this.
Wow.
But the game is very, very interesting in that it incorporated some elements that I think have sort of become the staple for survival games. Like you have a hunger meter, you have an energy meter, and I believe you also had a warmth meter. And the warmth meter is interesting mechanic because obviously as a flood occurs and you've got water pouring through this building and it's, you know, Christmas in Japan, it's going to be very, very cold weather, cold water. So you have to keep your body temperature up or you will literally go into hypothermia and freeze. So there's a lot of these different elements that you have to work through. I found it interesting because, of course, as a young teenager going into that stuff, I looked at there was sort of like a pseudo romance that you can get in the first character, who is apparently Kazuya Shinohara, aka Joshua Harwell, because of course they have to change the names for the American audience.
Localize, yeah.
Exactly. And he serves as a waiter to this grand opening for some kind of, I still don't know exactly what it was. I think it was supposed to be sort of like Walt Disney's idea for Epcot, where it was like this giant community center where it's like you lived and worked and played all in the same giant megastructure building. And it's during this like opening ceremony. And of course, as cliche as it is, you've got the mayor there and you're serving drinks as a waiter. And, you know, they're talking about this place is indestructible and it's wonderful and the best place to live.
Yep.
And then that very evening, the levee breaks and you notice like, there's some water on the floor. And then, within like an hour, basically the place is falling apart and you're having to crawl through the wreckage of this building, having just survived it as Joshua.
Wow.
And of course, the whole thing is you're supposed to be like, I guess you can decide whether or not to try to court Amber, but the whole thing, and this gets me to this day, where there's a jaw-dropping moment of like, they actually did that. As far as I know, there's no way to actually like get Amber to like you. You're trying to save her this whole time, and there's this whole sub-arc of like, I gotta save Amber and get to Amber, this and that. At no point in time can you actually like start a relationship with her, to my knowledge. There's a point in the story where it's like, I did all this for you, and she's like, oh, thanks, but you're like a friend to me. And getting friend zoned in a video game is not a good feeling.
Man, that's just like peak Japan game design. That's just the secret.
Right? Oh man, but no, honestly, like the game itself is very interesting. I look back on it fondly because it was a very unique title among games, especially for the era. Because I know a lot of the survival games that you really have out there, I mean, not talking about like horror survival like Silent Hill, but a lot of the more modern survival games like 7 Days to Die, well, I guess that's zombies, but still, Rust, and a variety of others that have come out in years following use some of these similar mechanics. So I see this as sort of like a precursor and a lead up to, obviously contributing to, not like the godfather of it or something, but, it's sort of a spiritual predecessor for some of the more modern survival games, which I absolutely love survival games. I think they're very interesting, a lot of fun, especially when you're able to interact with other people.
Right.
And this game being for the PlayStation 2, obviously it was only single player. There was nothing you could do about that. Your only option was really just to try to survive, and then you'd get in the next character.
Wow. Like, do your previous characters die, or is the goal like, hey, live as this character and then you can move on?
Well, see, that's the thing, is the whole goal of each character is different. Joshua's main goal is like, I have to get to the evacuation point and find Amber. And during this time, you have the ability to say, screw Amber, I'm just going to go on my own. Which I feel like at this point, there really isn't a disadvantage to doing that, other than just trying to be friendly. So like if you're doing this to be the knight in shining armor, it's not going to work. So at the end of the day, it's up to you. But literally, that scene ends with him, I think, getting on a helicopter or something, where they fly people to safety at like effectively a FEMA camp. So they've got these big tent structures and stuff. He gets on the helicopter and flies away. This is minor spoilers. This is literally, it's a very linear game, but it's survival get to this point.
Yeah.
So it's sort of balancing your stuff, running from things. There are quick time events, which I found pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then within that, as soon as you complete your journey as Joshua, it then jumps over to Amber and you play as her. And that's the only reason I even remember the name Amber, is because I see it sitting in front of me, is she's one of the main characters. And I'm gonna read this because this is just crazy. It says, Amber Brazil is a false criminal framed for her brother's death.
What?
Amber escapes custody when the police station collapses, but is unable to remove her handcuffs. I mean, it's just literally like going on and on and on.
False criminal. Maybe, I'm putting that on my next job description. False criminal.
This is the Wikipedia. I'm reading that. And you know what? I'm actually incorrect here. I gotta back that up here. It was not Amber that you're looking for. It's Stephanie. And I apologize for that, because I thought that you switched to her, but that's not the reality.
Oh.
And the whole thing, I mean, it's just crazy. I haven't played this game in like 8 or 9 years.
Fair.
It was one of those things I revisited, and I'm just like, yeah, this game was probably best left in the past, but boy, do I remember this fondly.
Right.
And that's really what this whole thing is about. So that is this game in a nutshell. I think it let's put it this way. Its reception was actually not half bad. It was scoring a 63 on Metacritic and a 7 out of 10 on Edge. It's got a 6.7 out of 10 on GameSpot, 7.5 out of 10 on IGN. But then you've got a 2.75 out of 5. Well, I guess that's actually not bad. 2.75 out of 5 on GamePro. It's only got a 4.5 out of 10 on Game Informer. It was sort of a mediocre title, like right in middle of the, middle of the range, if you will.
Right.
And I definitely wanted to start my segment with the least egregious of these games and move forward. So
Okay.
With that, I will get off of Raw Danger. If anyone has the ability to play this game and wants to give it a try, I'd say it's worth it, at least to play through it once and then realize that the mechanics are PlayStation 2 mechanics and very, very clunky,
Classic.
So what is your second game that we're looking at?
Well, let me see. I've got 2 more here. I think the one I was going to save for last is actually a lot more fitting of a jump off point because of Raw Danger there when it comes to classic games from our childhood. So this one comes with a bit of a story. I used to, so back when I lived overseas for a little bit because Air Force brat, I would buy Nintendo Power magazines from the Base Exchange. So I actually got to see, semi-delayed gaming news because it wasn't like the subscription service, but I could get it not that long after it came out. And I had a Nintendo DS, and so looking through the games, there was a big full cover page of what looked like a spaceship, and I was like, okay, I'm interested in this. And it was a Japanese game that had recently gotten translated. It was called Infinite Space by Sega. And
Infinite
Space had the idea of modular ship design and an RPG overall like theme. So I went ahead and grabbed it. I found it at the Base Exchange not that long after. I was like, yes, this is the one I read about. This is awesome. And while it wasn't exactly what I had originally envisioned, I kept playing it and I started to fall in love with what it was. It very much is... how do I put this? So if Elite Dangerous is something like a spaceship simulator where you're taking control of a usually single-person fighter craft all the way up to like single-person cargo ship deal, this is a naval simulator. This is a thing where you take like destroyers and cruisers and battleships and carriers, that kind of stuff. and you build your own little personal fleet with it as an independent kind of a spacer, as it were.
Okay.
It came with a fascinating series of little cinematics for trailers in an anime style that I really think they should have made into a show. I will insist that Sega one day do that. But regardless, I went in there for the spaceships, and I ended up actually falling in love with the story of the game, which is very much a young man going out into space trying to make his own way in the world, and ultimately coming to grips with a very complex political landscape of nations, the hubris of them, and a strange mystery having to do with artifacts that may or may not have been left by aliens, of which you see none in the game until the very end. Minor spoilers. But all of that to say, I liked it very, very much, to the point where I would kind of make it an annual, an annual tradition to pick it back up and play through it again. So why am I listing it as a bad game? Well, as a DS game, it wasn't terribly complex when it came to its combat system. The story is incredible, and I love the variety of ships and whatnot, but ultimately, the actual game mechanics when it comes to combat, which is most of how you progress through the story, is, well, it's just kind of rock, paper, scissors. Like, no matter how complex your ship is, and no matter how, like, detailed your build is, it tries to kind of be Pokemon, but it really ends up being, this attack will be better if the enemy uses that attack or that defense, and you get 6 buttons. Technically 9 buttons. But 3 of them are basically just redundancies. And
I see.
That's about it. So I often have replayed it for the story, but the actual battle mechanics aren't that great. And from what I understand, it did not go down in history as a fantastic game. It ranges, depending on who you ask, between middle of the road and kind of not good. I think the story was worth it. In fact, it has decent replayability because there's multiple branching paths in at least 3 parts of the story. So it's worth it for at least one more playthrough, and it recontextualizes a bunch of the weird esoteric stuff that you see in cutscenes in the first half once you've played through the game, and you're like, oh, I know what that is now. You know, it's a lot more ominous, but that said, its Infinite Space is a fun ride. The story is better than the mechanics. The bark is better than its bite. Mechanically, it's just kind of simple, straightforward, but story's worth it.
It's funny you mentioned that, because you said, it didn't have great reception and whatnot, but I'm looking at the scores. This game on average, first of all, from Metacritic, it's a 75. Really? But on average, its scores are between 7 and 8.
Really?
Out of 10.
Huh.
And not just that, I Googled this product. The very first thing you see is an Amazon listing for it. Do you know how much they're charging for this game on average?
I'm gonna look at my copies here, and I thought it would be like $30.
They are charging on Amazon right now. You can buy it right now with Prime.
Yeah.
For $105.99.
That's awesome.
Apparently, this game is actually very well loved, and according to eBay, it says the trending sale for Infinite Space for the DS is $100.
Did this just sleep? Like, did I look on the internet at a time when people just didn't care about it, and now in secret it's become a cult hit?
I wonder if people are looking at this with, rose-colored glasses, and this just the nostalgia train hit all at once, and everyone's buying up all these properties, because like right now you can go and buy. Okay, let's see. I just went to eBay. $105. There's one right now. It's quoted as new. Pre-owns. It comes with the cartridge, the case, and the 2 booklets. Is $118.70.
Sega, this is your chance. Make that anime. The shorts were good. A full story would be better. Please do it.
If you want just the cartridge,
yeah,
it's $69.99 or $64.99. 2 listings right next to each other. That is crazy. It is rare that you find any game that ends up selling for this much after it. And this isn't even like a classic game for like the NES or something.
No, I still play this on my old DSi XL when I can dust it off. Like, good gosh, really?
Yeah, that is absolutely crazy. And very, Very interesting. You've actually got me intrigued, but I am not going to be shelling out $70 for this game anytime soon.
No. In fact, so funny story about that. This has to have been a recent development, and here's how I know this. A while back, I managed to get a good buddy of mine, an artist buddy of mine, to actually try out the game. And when we bought it online, it was only like $40, maybe $50 for him to buy a cartridge new for himself. He played through it, he had a great time. Again, the story's more interesting than the mechanics, but to the same degree, like, that was only a couple of years ago. I don't want to think about how old I am, but the point is, it was not, it definitely wasn't 100, like, good gosh.
Yeah, maybe he needs to format that cartridge and go make some money.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. This would be the part where I recommend giving it a try. I would recommend playing it, but I didn't know it was that much. That's actually awesome.
Iron, we're supposed to be listing games that people don't like.
I thought... I genuinely...
I'm messing with you.
No, I mean, that's fair, but I genuinely did not think that would go over too well, because in order to get to the story... Let me put it to you this way. When I was a kid, I got stuck in that game, not once, but twice. There were 2 separate times, like months apart, where I painted myself into a corner, and it's easy to do that with the mechanics of the game. Like, you just end up kind of gimping yourself or giving yourself a really bad build and running out of money trying to make it work. And then by the time you try and switch it up, you would have to sell your current ship in order to get it. I did that at least twice. Once because I misunderstood some story prompts, and then the second time because I got right before, like, not a boss rush, but basically a massive rush where you have to go through a series of different encounters all at once with one ship when I could have had up to 4 at that point in the game, and it just... I remember how heartbroken I was because I had to restart the game. It was unrecoverable at that point. So I figured that, like, oh, clearly people don't like this game that much. I'm just crazy. But no, okay, fair. You have revealed unto me that I guess this game was more well-liked than I realized. Fair enough.
And what's really interesting, too, and I mean, I know that the DS era was sort of the point in time that multiplayer games were more common, but I wouldn't have thought a game like this would have actually been multiplayer either, but apparently it is.
So it kind of is. It's almost exclusively first player or single player, but they do let you battle other people who have it. So like weird DS mechanics, you are in the same area as someone who happens to have this game, which good luck. But you can then fight whatever fleet they currently have with whatever fleet you currently have. And my buddy and I, we ended up kind of, since we both had a cartridge, we actually tested this out. We went through the game kind of simultaneously for a run, and then we tried to fight each other at various points to see how our builds lined up, and it was fun. But ultimately, it really is a single-player experience where you can play online with people. This is a really bad example, but it's kind of like Armored Core in that it is a single-player game, but you can fight other people's builds for funsies.
Okay. Well, it sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate it's that expensive, or I would have tried it.
Yeah. I'm shocked. I really am. I didn't expect that. I mean, in a good way, mind you, but yeah.
All right. Well, now for a game that is actually, like, genuinely not liked.
Yeah?
But I like it.
Okay, what is it?
And I had to dig for this, right? Because, like, when my family, raised me, we had different consoles. I had the PlayStation, I had the GameCube followed by the PlayStation. I still have both of them, and they both still work, surprisingly. Okay. And my dad ended up getting himself an Xbox, and I'm talking the classic Xbox, released in like 2000 or 2001, whatever year that was, and ended up getting a bunch of games for it. But because of the controller setup and a bunch of titles that were not available or we just couldn't find for the PS2, they ended up getting a bunch of games, family games for myself and my sister.
Yeah.
And this one is one of those that we ended up getting on Xbox, and digging around, like, this is the only one that I looked at that was like genuinely terrible. This is the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory game. Here we go again, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, talking about the chocolate stuff. You saw that video there. I'll pop that up in the corner. but no, this game was honestly horrendously bad.
In what way?
I still remember the mini games and things where you're running around within the chocolate factory having to move it, and almost every time it was like collect this thing or jump over this spot or move this ball into another location. To an extent, it almost felt a little bit like Portal mixed with another just like generic collecting game. This is the only one of the movie games that I can say I genuinely actually liked, despite it being as bad as it is, because I put in a lot of hours on this one. Other games that I played that probably were either better received or I didn't like were like the Shrek 2 game. I played the Fairly Odd Parents game on the PS2. That was kind of interesting. The Matrix Reloaded. See, I wanted to talk about The Matrix because I think it was a really cool game, but it was super well received. This game was not.
So it's the opposite of what what just happened.
Oh yeah, and you know I'm gonna send you some pictures from this because it is just as bad as you think it could be.
Okay.
I mean, obviously the graphics were bad because it's from many years ago, but like. It just, oh my gosh, even by like those standards, it just wasn't good.
I see.
I'll pop some of these stuff up in here, but basically you play as Charlie in the chocolate factory. Yeah. Like I said, it's sort of a pseudo platformer collecting game, but the objective is to just keep moving through the factory. You get to one area and it'd be like, okay, you need to clear this level to get to the next one.
Okay.
That was it. There really weren't any other objectives, but hey, to a kid, you know, back in, what year was this? Let's see, 2005 is when this came out. To a kid in 2005, this was plenty.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you got a platformer, you played the game to play the game. There weren't really any other objectives. And especially following I think the movie was pretty well received.
Yes.
I don't recall people disliking the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie with Johnny Depp.
Well, I've heard some things and they're mixed, but typically Burton fans loved it, and a lot of the staunch fans of the original Gene Wilder adaptation tended to hate on it a little more often. So I've heard both positive and negative. I'm in the camp of, look, I love Burton films, and yes, I'm aware of their flaws. They are still fun.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what this was. It was sort of a charming movie. Johnny Depp was, I mean, he's Johnny Depp. Like
he's Johnny Depp.
And just about anything he plays, you're going to enjoy his character to some extent because he's just fun.
Oh yeah.
And honestly, like the game itself was not good. All I can say is it was very lacking in character, and there wasn't a lot to like about it other than the fact that I'm just very nostalgic for it. I just had to bring awareness to this game. It was everything that you would hope a movie adaptation game was not, and yet I still absolutely loved it. And if I can ever find an emulation software, because our Xbox died, and I'm not going to spend, $500 or whatever that is on a refurbished one from 20 years ago, if I can ever find a good emulation software, I might actually try to replay this game.
Oh yeah, like actually go through it and like see how it holds up, as it were.
See how bad those mechanics actually are, because I feel like a lot of these, even just the like the inputs, where you'd like move, it's like, okay, I need to move between 2 and 3 inches, but the controller's minimum is 0 and maximum is 5, and it goes from 0 to 5 like that.
Immediately, yeah.
Old school platformers.
That's the way it goes. That's just,
what more can I say?
Yeah, that such is the nature of things, unfortunately. Or fortunately, depending on how it goes.
Exactly. But I'm going to quick move on to this because I have more to talk about on the next topic when we reach that. But I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to you for your third and final game.
All right. So this one, I had some debate over it. I had a couple of options I was going to put on there. Maybe something to save for next time. But this one is a bit of a weirdie. Again, a little bit of background. So round back in, say, 2022-ish, I went on a bit of a odd shopping spree, which is to say I basically went into Steam. I believe I typed in the word synthwave in the search bar, and I started buying very cheap games with it. Like, I'm talking dirt cheap games just to see how they were, and I would write little reviews on them. And every now and then I'd find a gem. Now, you get what you pay for. So what I'm about to mention is not a good game, but it's so cheap as to where I would actually recommend giving it a shot. This game has the relatively unimaginative title of Cybershock Future Parkour.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's exactly kind of how it sounds. And the game mechanics are very simple. It's got maybe 3 soundtracks. You are a dude with a gun, theoretically in a computer, and your goal is to run across the stage, shoot viruses, and then make it to the goal. It's got a simple timer, and it's got some pretty decent parkour mechanics. You can jump off walls, you can slide, all that kind of stuff. It is, by all technicality, not a great game. However, at $3, and if you buy it on sale, it's like $1. I would actually say that it's pretty darn good for what you pay for. And not only that, it was intriguing to me how interesting the level design could be for a game this simple. Again, the goal is easy. Run from one area of the track to the other, shoot the things that you need to, and then get to the exit portal. Not only does the timer kind of make you want to race yourself to get the best time possible, if not the best time on the overall leaderboard, but every single level introduces a new mechanic. So for instance, whereas the first level is very straightforward and introduces you to a little bit of everything, the next one might have you, oh hey, there's a new type of boost on the wall that I'm going to have to figure out how to use to its fullest. Oh, the next level I have to shoot a target or else I will not be able to bounce off of this thing to move higher. Oh, this area requires me to basically go through water bubbles in order to jump from place to place. And for being like a $3 game with only 20 levels, every single level is distinct and introduces a new mechanic that it makes you think around. So, is it a good game? No. But does it use its absolutely minimal premise and concepts and mechanics to the absolute fullest? Yes. And I kind of like that. Let me see. I think I wrote a little review here. Gosh, yeah, there it is, back from years ago. Let's see here. I wrote, a fun little game with mechanics that keep the levels fast-paced and interesting. For the price tag, it's an absolute blast, and the visuals are beautifully retro. Yeah, that was definitely younger me. Anyway, but nonetheless, like, it's simple, it's straightforward, and it's dirt cheap. So it's not a good game, but it's fun for what it is. And if you just want to do, like, I got a buddy of mine who loves to speedrun things like the whole test track on, what's it called, Titanfall 2. And shockingly, it feels a lot like the Titanfall parkour system when you're on foot. Honestly, it's a fun little romp.
You know what this game reminds me of? I've been watching the trailer for it. This is one of those games that someone plays. It's like Subway Surfer or something to that extent, where it's like you got it on in the background while someone's reading like Reddit posts on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's extremely mesmerizing. I'm just watching this. I'm like, I could watch this all day long.
Yeah, and again, it's in terms of like all the sorts of games that I've played, I couldn't truly call this a good one, but you get what you pay for, and this squeezes every ounce of value out of the $3 I paid for it. Zero regrets.
I think it's pretty cool, honestly. You're supposed to bring bad games. This is
well, see, I have this. No. I have this thing, right? Like, there are games in this list that I played that, because like I said, I just kind of went through, and if it had the word cyberpunk on it, I would just buy it and see how it was. There's one that I couldn't play at all called Outdrive. There's 2 that use the exact same mechanics. I don't remember which 2 of these they were. Let's see here. There's one that was literally just a puzzle game. Like, it was just, you go through a little maze and there's nothing unique about it, so I couldn't call it good, but I couldn't call it bad. It is what it is. And some of these were real gems. Like, there's one called Technotron Defense that, much like this game, was dirt cheap, but also it has a lot more replayability, and it's just a genuinely fun tower defense game, so I can't call it bad. And then there's a game like this, where it's cheap enough to where the simple, technically repetitive mechanics are still good. So you asked me for bad games that we still love. That's my justification for it. There's gonna be something I love in some way that I can explain that this game is definitely good, guys, TM. I'm not crazy. While at the same time being a bad game.
So I'll actually hand it to you on this in the regards to it being a quote-unquote bad game.
Yeah.
It technically has a 0 on Metacritic.
Exactly. And that's what I mean, is like, this is... It almost feels like some student's game project of like, hey, I'm just learning how to code games. Here's, I don't know, a little test of my mechanics for parkour. Maybe I'll make a little money on the side. That's what it feels like this game is and was. I don't know, maybe still is.
I'm gonna guess it probably is the case because looking at the developer, it's the same as the publisher, and it's Javier Federico Goldschmidt. That doesn't exactly sound like a big development company to me. It sounds like a dude who made this in his spare time.
Exactly, and to that guy, to Javier there, kudos. You made a very, very fun game that is worth the $3. Like, if this was sold at $20, I'd call it a ripoff. If this was 100% free, I might say, I mean, you could charge something for this, or at the very least, I'd praise it even more for being an amazing, fun game. I probably wouldn't have even listed it here because I was just like, this for free? Awesome. But $3? Is it a good game? No. But is it worth the price tag? Yes.
I mean, shoot, it's got a 92% on Steam, so people seem to be quite happy with that.
I was gonna say, it's got a very small group of people who play it, and I only have a few hours in it total. So I'm no expert. I'm definitely not like a speed-running maniac when it comes to this game, but it's fun for what you get. So it's a technically bad game that I still love. And
there you go.
If the developer is watching this because the name of your game showed up, I don't mean technically bad in like a bad way. I mean, it ain't a AAA game, but I still like it.
Well, nothing wrong with that. I mean, everybody's got to start somewhere.
Exactly.
And even if it's just a coding project, like, heck, it's better than anything I could make, that's for sure.
We'll have to see about that one day.
Yeah, someday, right? All right.
So what's your
and
final?
For the last game on this list, this is indisputably, irrefutably, possibly one of the worst games ever made. And I actually took a video game history class back in college, so I'm at least somewhat, equipped to say that. This is, and technically 2 games.
Oh my gosh, can
3
I guess?
if you're counting, but 2.
Can I guess?
This is... go for it.
Okay, using a description like that, I almost am tempted to assume that you're about to say Superman 64.
That is not correct.
Oh my gosh. What is
it? This is The Legend of Zelda Philips CDI games. These games are so bad that they're good.
This piece is what all true warriors strive for.
You've killed me! Good.
My ship sails in the morning. I wonder what's for dinner.
My cakes will burn. Like, oh my gosh. This game is... Okay, so for anyone who does not know what this is, back in the 90s, and I'm literally just gonna read this off of the Wikipedia. It says, Philips Interactive Media published 3 action-adventure games based on Nintendo's Legend of Zelda franchise for its compact disc interactive players, also known as the CDI. These are very, very defunct gaming consoles. They don't make them anymore. I don't think they've touched them since the 90s.
No.
To actually get these games to play, you have to play them on an emulator.
Yes.
There's no other way, unless you're somehow unearthing one of these ancient consoles and attempting to hook it up to your old CRT. So if you want to go that route and you want to be legit, cool, just be aware you're going to spend a lot more money than if you just played it online with an emulator. Yeah. I personally don't have a problem with emulators for games that they don't make anymore. Right. So, and I know Nintendo's got this thing about it, but this is Philips, so, go contact them. They make light bulbs now.
Yeah.
Anyway, this game is, and I say 2 games, not 3, because the third one's kind of the odd one out.
Yeah.
But there were 2 of them that really stood out as like particularly bad, and that is, the games themselves are The Legend of Zelda, Link: The Faces of Evil, and Zelda: The Wand of Gamelon.
Yeah.
And these were literally right between some of the most iconic, Legend of Zelda games ever made. We're talking A Link to the Past in 1991, and then immediately after Wand of Gamelon, technically Zelda's Adventure, which is the third one in this, and I don't count that among these, but was the Ocarina of Time. I mean, these are legendary games, and somehow these 3 games managed to make their way into this lineup in the early 90s. It was a dark time for the Legend of Zelda fans, apparently.
Yes.
I wouldn't know. I wasn't around back then, but I have seen enough of the gameplay. I've watched through, and this is not, any kind of affiliation or sponsorship with, but I've watched through the Game Grumps play these games all the way through. I don't think I've actually completed any of these games, although I have actually played them on the emulator, so I think I can qualify in saying it's a game I love because they are so bad they're good.
Oh yeah, I didn't include that in my list because I haven't actually played the games, but almost every cutscene is indelibly ingrained in my mind because I grew up during the golden age of YTPs.
Oh man. I mean, so for anybody who's unfamiliar with this, and I do recommend you go watch, whether it's Game Grumps or someone else play them, please go watch these games. They are some of the funniest bits of media from that era because of how bad they are. This, and if you're familiar with the whole, what was his name? Dr. Oh my gosh, it was that Russian animation. I'm trying to think of the
Dr. Livesey?
Dr. Livesey, thank you.
Oh yeah,
if
Treasure
you're familiar
Planet.
with the Dr. Livesey style, yeah, the Treasure Planet, the Russian Treasure Planet animation, it is almost identical in animation style because it probably came from the same studio.
Yes, they use
I say this,
an odd number of frames that we didn't use in the West.
Not just that, it was oddly detailed. Proportions were always sort of weirdly offset. It almost felt like caricaturizations. And moreover, the fact that they apparently Philips CDI outsourced the animation to Russia in the early 90s. And I'm guessing this had something to do with the, collapse and dissolution of the USSR. And they're probably all right, let's, out of good faith, let's work with these folks and try to make this better. It just, it was horrible. The animation is so uncanny and the voice acting is so bad. It is absurd. And some of the worst voice acting you get in the entire game comes from the main characters. Comes from Link and Zelda. They are, oh my gosh, there's a point where literally at the very end of it, I can't remember the exact context of what leads up to it, but it's something to the extent of, Link, you've saved the kingdom. And Link looks over at Zelda and says, oh, that deserves a kiss, doesn't it? And she goes, ha! And it cuts back to Link, and he just goes, I won! It is some of the funniest things because they are so bad. The voice acting alone is a reason enough to love this game.
It is, and it birthed the it partially birthed the phenomenon of YTPs, stands for YouTube poops, aka just taking these clips of this and then various other media and splicing them together, especially characters like the King Harkinian from both of those first 2 Zelda games for the CDI. Or more famously, because he actually kind of broke out into the wider internet for a little while, Morshu, the Shopkeep, because people would take his voice lines and splice them into saying whatever else. I think it's a 6 to 8 hour long video called Morshu Reads the Entire Bible, and it isn't AI.
I remember that.
It is not AI. Look that up, seriously. Morshu Reads the Bible. It's not AI, it is splicing. They literally splice which consonants equal which sounds, and then they lined it up with the Bible and had Morshu read it. It's nigh indecipherable without subtitles, but it is beyond hilarious and a testament to the format of the meme.
I remember that. I think I came across that 5 or 6 years ago, just scrolling the internet, and I'm like, Morshu Reads the Bible. What is this? Yep. And I clicked that. It is exactly as you're saying. Oh my gosh, it's some of the funniest stuff. And for people who don't it can't really process it or don't want to look it up. If you've ever seen some of these videos where it's like presidents sing whatever, and it'll be like Obama singing "Never Gonna Give You Up" or something to that extent, where they literally just pull in like clips of them saying particular syllables. That's exactly how it works.
Back in my day, before voice AI, this was how you had to do it.
Either that or you dubbed it and you just had to have a really good impression.
That's true.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, these games are terrible in every aspect of what makes a game bad. And it's one of the only ones I think I can say that I've one, played, two, actually sat down and seen the whole thing, and three, loved every moment despite it being one of the worst games ever made.
Yeah, I mean, it's so ridiculously entertaining. Again, I grew up with the YTPs using clips from this, and even just watching the footage raw of the games itself. Like, first off, apparently the mechanics were clunky because the CDI, I mean, Philips had never made video games before. They didn't know what they were doing. But
oh yeah,
on top of that, the voice acting and the weird, clunky mechanics of the game, it was just absolutely beautiful. Just like, not into the pit, it burns, for Ganon there. Just absolutely ridiculous, and I love it. And the characters, I'm glad this game was made. It's terrible, and I'm so glad the game was made, because we would not have so many early internet memes without these guys.
Can you imagine if a game like this came out today?
Well, it would probably get, like, shot into the ground, but in the best way possible, and then have a lot of ironic posters, going over it. In fact, someone made I can't call it a retro clone. I need to look up what this is called. It is a current day CDI game. And what I mean by that is it uses the same rough engine and visuals and tries to recreate the animation style and manner of voice acting.
Well, while you're looking that up, I will mention that not only was, obviously the voice acting really bad and the animations were bad, but even the gameplay in this game was really, really weird. I mean, we're talking, you're having to dodge dinosaurs throwing things at you. Like, it just, the whole thing felt weird and out of place. It almost reminded me of some kind of offshoot developer who had probably worked at some kind of a video game or animation studio or something back in the day, and had managed to sneak assets from that game and then put it in this other game. And they're like, oh, we need enemies for this game. What are we gonna do? I don't know, but I got a bunch of these dinosaur, GIFs. Perfect. We'll do exactly that. We're gonna have pterodactyls fly over and drop hammers on Link. Perfect. Why didn't I think of that?
Oh, and I found it. Okay, it was a game that was made called Arzette, the Jewel of Faramore, and the idea was it was released in February of 2024, so just last year, and it was meant to be a spiritual successor to Link, the Faces of Evil, and Zelda, the Wand of Gamelon. It's an action platformer that functions about the same way, but with slightly more, clean controls, because they wanted people to actually play this. But what really made it interesting was that they got a bunch of voice actors and all kinds of other stuff there in order to try and build this game. So they got people who loved hated treated it the way we're treating it, the old Zelda titles for the CDI, and were like, hey, we're making a CDI game in the modern day. And it ended up working.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think I did hear about this.
Oh?
But I've never actually seen it, and I wasn't sure if it was like a mod or something, but no, this is just a straight up game released for apparently the Nintendo Switch, the PS4, the PS5, Windows, and the Xbox Series X and S.
Yeah.
That is just wild to me that it is basically on every console.
Well, yeah.
I mean, again, it just goes to show, right? Like, we're not the only ones who look at this game and say, man, that sucked. I love it.
Let me see here. Sorry, I'm reading further here. They got voice actors Jeffrey Rath and Bonnie Jean Wilbur, voice actors for Link and Zelda in the original CDI games, to be voicing the game's tutorial and narrator respectively. Now, also, some of the original artists from the CDI games, including artist Rob Dunleavy, helped to make the game. So he reached out to
That is awesome.
Yeah, the idea was just a love letter to these silly games. So if nothing else, one good game came out of all of this, and a whole lot of years of silly and ironic / post-ironic love for it. So that's a very good pick.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't list it because I'd never played it, but it's a good pick.
Ruthless mocking of the game, but it's honestly, like, I couldn't think of a better one to kind of wrap this up. Just like, I was really hoping you didn't throw this in your list, because I was like, okay, we'll just talk about it for more time, I guess. But no, honestly, these games, again, they are not good games, but my gosh, if you have the opportunity to play it, just give it a try, or at least watch the gameplay or like playthroughs or something, because it is so bad it's good.
Yeah.
Oh boy, but yeah, I guess the moral in this story is, I don't know. Some games are better played once they've aged. I don't know. Maybe sometimes it's funny.
I think the moral may be that everything that is created, especially with a creator spirit in mind, will have some merit to someone. And even if the majority of people find no value in something, if even one person finds value in the creative pursuit and effort that was put into something, then it was worth it.
There you go. Couldn't have said it better myself. But I guess with that, we can go ahead and wrap up this episode. I want to thank everybody for watching here. If you have a game that you absolutely love that is considered bad by all metrics and determination, please drop it down in the comments. I'd love to read that.
I'd love to see what people say.
And if you want to see a part 2 to this, I'd love to do that as well, because I think this is, you know, there's many more games that have been untouched, unmentioned, and are equally as bad but good going into the future. So we'd love to make another one of those if you're interested. So with that said, thank you very much, Iron, for joining me today and being able to you know, kind of get through this list and
absolutely
see what exactly we're looking at.
Absolutely.
And I want to thank everybody for watching. I hope you have a good one, and as always, stay awesome.